racism at a school in our country. A learner in a school hockey team is accused of using a racial slur, a racist slur, and against a player in another hockey team. The incident happened on Friday night. The person accused of using the word was playing for the Michaelhouse hockey team against a team from St Johns College. These are two of the most expensive schools in the country. The parents of children at these schools are often part of what you could call the elites in our society, certainly the richest. The two schools then cancelled their entire weekend of sporting events as a result. Michaelhouse and St Johns is Executive Director of the Independent Schools Association of Southern Africa. Michaelhouse, good afternoon to you and thank you for your time. The schools immediately condemned this incident. They cancelled the entire weekend's worth of events. Did they react in the right way to this?
I think that what was very interesting that this is a watershed moment in South African education, where an alleged incident of racism happened on the field, and the boys in the schools made a joint decision to actually say this is not acceptable, and if one person is going to decide that they're going to try and destroy everything for everybody else, that's what's going to happen. It was regrettable, but I think that it was a joint decision by all the schools and the boys of the schools to say this is unacceptable and this is such an aberration that no more sports will be taken care will go forward for the weekend.
We keep having incidents like this in our schools, not just in independent schools, obviously. Schools are taking children from their own families into a school. The point I'm making is that a school cannot control everything that happens at a school. You can't control a child. I mean, you're dealing with people who are 17, 18, sometimes 19 years old. How should they deal with racial and racist incidents, things like this?
So, Stephen, the Human Rights Commission has been very, very clear. And allegedly, the student used the K word. The Human Rights Commission, some 10 years ago, made it very clear that all schools, in their code of conduct, have to prohibit the use of racial slurs in their code of conduct. And that the sanction for the use of racial slurs is actually dismissal or expulsion. And as we hear from the news media, it seems that the student who was involved in this matter was on a cautionary suspension and removed from the school immediately. This is in line with the South African law and general expectations of now what society expects to be done when somebody uses such slurs.
One of the things that should obviously be happening is that schools should be trying to educate the children in their care around issues around race and diversity. Do you think schools are doing that?
And I think that your prior question, Stephen, was actually correct. Yes, schools are trying to do the very best that they can, but invariably, in all good lessons, some few people want to not follow what is actually the expectations. But I think that in this incident, where one person decided to destroy the weekend for his whole school and another school, is going to send a very clear message. Don't think that it's going to just simply be, oh my gosh, you're just a bad apple. Actually, there's consequences for other people if you elect to think that this is the way that you're going to conduct yourself in the 21st century.
One of the things, I mean, it's also about families, right? It's also about the families that our children are coming from. I mean, this was a young man, I suppose, 17, 18, 19, probably 17 or 18. I mean, he's got it from somewhere. Probably didn't get it from the school. Very unlikely, in fact, that he would get it from the school, certainly in a formal setting. It would come from a family.
It is, and I think that, and also I think that my caution parents here, if you're not preparing your child for a world of acceptance and love and respect, you're going to be damaging your own child. Because wherever this boy did pick this up, as if the alleged incident, the slur happened, and it seemed that it did, I mean, this poor boy now has destroyed his schooling career. He's suspended. He now has to find out other ways of continuing with school. He's going to go through a disciplinary hearing. So parents, this is a cautionary tale for all of you. Schools and society are not going to accept racism in any form. And I think that as we're also seeing in higher education, there's criminal liability now. And as we also saw with Ms. Sparrow, I think, people actually even end up getting criminal records and going to jail by using racial slurs. So really, it is a caution to all families, prepare your children, and if you're conducting these kinds of things in front of children, you are actually damaging and placing your own child in great peril within the world context and the expectations of respect and non-racism in the world.
I could imagine that some teachers at any school, government school or an independent school, may feel that standing up in front of a class of children and talking about race, they might find that very difficult. They might feel that they can't do it, or they haven't done enough work on themselves, would go the phrase, or they just feel that they actually don't know enough to talk to children about race. They might actually be very nervous in front of a multiracial class. And I think most of the classes at independent schools are multiracial. Are there particular ways to follow? Are there particular, maybe not lessons, but guidelines to follow to talk to our children about race for schools to follow?
Look, we all have a constitutional obligation to actually heal the divisions of the past. So I think that all educators must educate themselves on what those divisions were, and actually all of us must work hard to try and heal those divisions. And I think the Constitution, in its very preamble, speaks of that. So really, I do encourage that educators educate themselves about the new changing context. So even in schools now, it's not only really about issues of race, but also I think in our country, issues of gender and gender rights with the gender rights and the pandemic that we have against women in our country and around the world is something that must be discussed. Sexual identity must be something that must be discussed with respect, open-mindedness, and inquiry, rather than being very certain about what your position is. And I think that also it's important that as educators, we must keep our personal views aside and think very deeply about what kind of world we're trying to educate our children in. And this is not a time for fear. This is a time to embrace our diversity, to educate ourselves, see how we can heal the divisions of the past, and be willing to say sorry, or I don't know, or I don't understand, but I'll try and do better, and I will learn and teach myself what I need to do to prepare my children for the 21st century.
There's a reason why stories around schools like this have a particular power. And it's not just because people are, it's rich people's children. It's not about that. I think that really the reason that these stories around schools like these, like Michaelhouse and St Johns, have such power is because that these are the children of our country's elite. And they're also, almost by definition, if you look at education, what you could still call educational apartheid to an extent, these are the people who we expect are probably going to be leading our country in the future. We're not alone in this. I mean, the majority of judges in Britain come from private schools, independent schools as well. The point I'm trying to make is, do you think that the schools that you represent in your association are properly preparing our future elites for our society in the future?
I think that the example of both bishops and, Michaelhouse and St Johns is that these are brother schools. Let's not forget this. These are brother schools, they're Anglican schools, both started in the 19th century. So in effect, they're the same school, started out of the same kind of Anglican Christian tradition. So it really is important for us to see that this is a challenge for society as a whole. And I think what this weekend showed, and I think that we didn't expect it, was that actually guys, as an elite, as you're saying that they are elite, but I think that any child who goes to a fee-paying school is part of the elite in South Africa, be it public or independent. What is very clear now from the elite is saying, oh, you think that racial prejudice is acceptable? We are saying to you now, no. There was one hockey game that was played, there were other fixtures that were planned, and one person destroyed a weekend for two schools, and all those kids and all those boys in practice were prepared and excited to play. And one person destroyed it. So what they're saying is we've got zero tolerance for racism, and that the consequence of it is that actually we will not continue to engage in sports fixtures if we cannot make sure that there's going to be respect and the upholding of dignity and human rights for all players on the field.
Thank you, Executive Director of the Independent Schools Association of Southern Africa. I do appreciate the time. In a moment, you've had so many conversations, seen so many conversations around the generation of electricity by independent